Welcome to Module 4, Pre-Opening Procurement and Vendor Management. Specifically, we are looking at Lesson 4.2, Inventory and Receiving Controls. The most common point of financial control failure in the expenditure cycle occurs in the gap between the physical receipt of goods and the processing of the vendor invoice. We can map this risk by looking at a timeline of the transaction. On the left side, we have the physical arrival of goods at the property, inventory physically hitting the loading dock. On the far right side, days or weeks later, the back office processes the vendor invoice to issue payment. The time and space between these two events creates a massive operational blind spot. The personnel receiving the inventory are physically and temporally separated from the accounts payable team authorizing the cash. Without strict visibility across this gap, a hotel is highly exposed. This environment allows for routine errors, like paying for items that never arrived, or targeted fraud, such as processing entirely fictitious invoices. Relying on human communication between departments is insufficient to secure the cash flow. The property requires a systemic, mathematical defense mechanism that neutralizes these vulnerabilities automatically. This mechanism is the three-way match standard operating procedure. Directors of finance enforce this mandatory protocol to close the vulnerability gap and algorithmically authenticate every single liability before a cent leaves the hotel. The architecture of this control environment rests on three specific documents. As you can see in this diagram, the first is the purchase order. Generated internally before any goods are shipped, it serves as the initial official authorization to execute a transaction with a vendor. By issuing the PO, the hotel establishes a rigid ceiling on the exact volume of goods it is legally agreeing to accept. Simultaneously, it locks in the unit cost. This isolates the hotel from future vendor price fluctuations or unexpected surcharges. However, a purchase order only represents intent. Intent provides zero legal or financial justification to actually transfer funds to a supplier. To justify payment, administrative intent must be verified against the physical reality on the property. The PO successfully sets the financial expectation, but until there is independent proof that the goods have arrived, that expectation cannot trigger a payment. The loading dock is the critical point of impact, where expected goods finally transition into physical hotel property. This brings us to the second pillar of the three-way match, the receiving report. Generated precisely upon arrival, this document serves as the objective, physical verification of exactly what has been delivered. To ensure the integrity of this verification, hotels enforce a strict separation of duties. This is a structural defense designed specifically to prevent internal collusion. Under this rule, the receiving agent creating the report must be entirely independent from the purchasing department. The person who ordered the goods cannot be the person who confirms their arrival. By isolating these responsibilities, the physical loading dock effectively functions as a secure, remote extension of the finance office's control environment. The receiving agent operates under a strict mandate. They must record the exact quantities based solely on their own physical counts, ignoring any delivery metrics claimed by the vendor's documentation. Alongside counting items, the agent evaluates the condition and quality of the delivery, ensuring damaged or substandard goods are rejected at the door. Once the count and inspection are complete, this data is immediately logged into the property's inventory management system. With the receiving report finalized, the hotel possesses the unassailable physical evidence required to transform a theoretical expectation into a verified operational receipt. The final variable in this equation is introduced externally by the supplier. This is the vendor invoice, detailing the billed cost and billed quantity. It is critical to view the invoice strictly as a request for payment. On its own, a vendor's invoice carries no inherent proof that the delivery actually took place. Now, the isolated data points from all three documents converge in the accounts payable execution matrix. We see the logic execute here. The system maps the quantity field on the invoice directly against the authorized quantity on the original purchase order. Next, it verifies the unit price on the invoice against the agreed-upon unit price from the purchase order. Finally, it cross-references the physically received quantity recorded on the receiving report against the invoiced quantity. If these data points misalign by a single unit or a single cent, the system registers a discrepancy. Upon detecting a discrepancy, the accounts payable system instantly triggers an automatic hold, freezing the payment process entirely. This interlocking logic gate effectively neutralizes the threat of entirely fictitious invoices, as a fake bill will never possess a corresponding receiving report. The accounts payable team functions as the final checkpoint, executing the matching logic to confirm the hotel's liability is legitimate and supported by physical evidence. While mathematical perfection is the goal, supply chains generate friction. We must account for systemic exceptions. To manage this, the Director of Finance defines precise, pre-approved rules, known as variance tolerances. Consider a minor discrepancy in bulk supplies. If the data flow shows a standard 5% quantity variance for low-value goods, the system routes it to auto-approve. Accounts payable clears these deviations, ensuring routine hotel operations are not halted. However, this operational flexibility absolutely does not apply to high-risk scenarios, involving specialized, high-value furniture, fixtures, and equipment. For high-value items, any deviation in price or quantity bypasses accounts payable entirely. The system triggers a hard stop, placing the invoice on hold until it receives mandatory review and approval from the chief accountant. Various tolerances ensure the three-way match remains a rigorous financial shield, protecting capital without grinding daily property operations to an unnecessary halt. When we pull back and view the fully executed three-way match, we see an unbroken chain of logic. This alignment ensures the hotel only pays for goods that were actually ordered and physically delivered in the correct quantity and quality. The three-way match serves as the financial gatekeeper, identifying discrepancies and preventing cash leakage throughout the purchasing process. Its strict application is why the three-way match forms the bedrock of audit and control curricula at institutions like the Europe Hotel School, London. True financial control is only achieved when administrative authorization, physical reality, and external billing perfectly align to create a verified liability.